11th of February 2020, you're watching the news in Africa and the world. In a short notice, Cameroonian youths today, February 11, 2020, celebrate the 54th edition of National Youth Day. It is a day the nation celebrates her future generation, and it has always been the case. The President of the Republic, Paul Biya, addressed these young people on the eve of the celebration, calling on them to shun violence and drug consumption, take greater interest in political life of the country, inviting youths of the troubled regions to drop their arms and take advantage of the decentralization process for greater participation in nation building. Teodoro Obiang, the vice president of oil-rich yet impoverished Equatorial Guinea, was slapped with a €30 million fine and had a 3-year suspended jail term upheld on Monday for fraudulently amassing wealth in France. The Paris Court of Appeal weighed down the conviction pronounced at first instance on October 27, 2017, at the end of the first so-called ill-gotten trial. Before the French justice system, the Paris Criminal Court had pronounced the same prison sentence but has suspended a fine of €30 million. Obiang's conviction includes embezzling funds, misuse of corporate property, and breach of trust. This second trial acquitted him of money laundering and corruption charges. Paris Public Prosecutor's Office had called for a 4-year custodial sentence. The €30 million fine and for all property seized to date remain confiscated by the state. The International Court of Justice is in the process of ruling whether the seizure of the mansion breached a diplomatic relations treaty. A number of hearings will take place in The Hague next week on the Avenue Foch mansion issue. Case to be continued. In Algeria, the brother of former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika and 2 ex-intelligence chiefs convicted of conspiracy against the state have been condemned to a 15-year prison term this Monday. The said people said Bouteflika and Louis Hanoun, Secretary General of the Workers' Party. It took 48 hours behind closed doors and amid tight security for the judges of Blida to decide. He had served as a key presidential aide but was detained in May last year, a month after Bouteflika quit office weeks into a massed protest against his bid for a 5th presidential term. The 4 defendants were accused of having met in March 2019 in a bid to derail plans by the Army High Command to force the departure of Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Defense lawyers had hoped the 4 would be released after Algeria's balance of power shifted. The anti-government protest movement that brought down Bouteflika has continued demanding the dismantling of the political system in its representatives who have been in power for several decades. Incorrect fuel figures in the impoverished West African country has greatly led to the shortage of fuel that has dragged on for 2 weeks now. Sloppy bookkeeping and poor port infrastructure also contributed by causing long queues of petrol pumps. According to port and government officials, an undrenched port in the capital Monrovia has prevented large fuel tanks from docking, promising in 3 weeks' time the port will be ready for fuel supply. Liberia suffers frequent fuel shortages, but the current one has lasted an unusual long time. Queues forming before dawn at petrol stations are now commonplace. Scarcity has forced taxis and bikes to hike transport fares, compounding economic difficulties. Fuel scarcity means it's harder to move goods around the country. The threat of billions locusts sweeping across East Africa and South Asia are feeding on farms and fields, prompting urgent warnings. 10 million people in the region are now at risk of hunger and famine. Somalia and Pakistan had declared a state of emergency after it was locust infestation in 25 years. The UN says the most devastating plague of locust living memory could be within weeks if the world doesn't do enough to stop the outbreak. It's estimated that there are about 12 million people already in need of humanitarian assistance in terms of food security. Climate experts say Monday, an unusual fall of heavy rain in the region and the powerful cyclone in Somalia last year are some of the reasons behind the outbreak. With more rains predicted in the coming weeks, things are expected to get worse. One of the key discussions during the African Union Summit was on how to tackle the challenges of climate change. With this, the East African and South Asia region hopes to get reaction soon. African leaders on Sunday condemned U.S. President Donald Trump's Mid-East plan as illegitimate, taking advantage of an African Union summit to voice solidarity with Palestinian cause. The proposals include giving Israel the green light to annex settlements in the occupied West Bank, the largest part of the territory the Palestinians see as their future state. The AU Commission Chairman Musa Faki Mahamat told assembled heads of state that the plan unveiled in late January represented the umpteenth violation of the multiple United Nations and African Union's resolutions. The outgoing AU chair, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, said in his remarks Sunday that the Palestinian cause will always be in the hearts and minds of people of Africa. South African President, his successor Cyril Ramaphosa, on his part, compared Trump's proposal to regulations in place during his country's apartheid period. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who regularly attends AU summit, was unavoidably absent to Ethiopia this year. China's President Xi Jinping has visited health staff in Beijing treating patients infected with the new coronavirus in a rare public appearance amid the outbreak. He donned a face mask and has his temperature checked Monday, calling the situation at the virus epicenter still very grave. Xi urged more decisive measures to contain the spread of the epidemic. He had largely kept out of the public eye since the virus outbreak spiraled across the country from the epicenter in Hubei province that has infected more than 40,000 people. The death last week of a doctor in the city who tried to warn colleagues about the virus but was targeted by authorities sparked an outpouring of grief and anger on social media, much of it directed against Mr. Xi's government. On Monday, a World Health Organization expert team arrived to China to investigate the outbreak following nearly 2 weeks of negotiations with Beijing. The organization now says that the fatality rate for the virus appears to be about 2%. He expressed his respect and sincere gratitude to all the medical workers who are fighting on the front line against the epidemic. Into some natural disaster story, fierce winds and heavy rains claim at least 6 lives across northern Europe on Monday as Storm Ciara disrupted travel, ground hundreds of flights, flooded roads and left vast areas without power supply. In one of the region's most violent storms for years, 1 man died and another was reported missing in southern Sweden when their boat capsized. In the Czech Republic, 1 man died when his car went off the road trying to avoid a fallen tree. In southern Poland, a 40-year-old woman and her young daughter were killed by roofing torn away by the storm-force winds, and the list continues. It has caused extensive flooding in England, cut power to 130,000 homes in northern France, and played havoc with air, rail and road travel in several countries. Thank you very much for your kind and keen attention. Till we meet again, happy Youth Day to you all.